In this lesson, we will explore how to work with files using the C programming language. We will learn about file pointers and the different modes available for accessing files. Remember that files are accessed through file pointers in C. Different modes control read and write access. The fopen function creates the connection to the file, and the fclose function releases the file resources. Here's a basic example showcasing file operations in C, including the necessary header file, standard input-output.h. Inside the main function, a file pointer is declared. The fopen function is used to open a file named example.txt in write mode. It's important to check if the file was opened successfully by ensuring the file pointer is not null. If it's null, there was an error opening the file, and the program should return 1. Let's explore the common file modes available in C. The R mode is used to open an existing file for reading. If the file doesn't exist, fopen returns null. The W mode is used to create a new file for writing. If the file already exists, it truncates it to 0 length. The A mode is for appending, which opens a file for writing at the end of the file. If the file doesn't exist, it creates a new one. The R+ mode opens an existing file for both reading and writing. The W+ mode creates a new file for both reading and writing, and truncates the file if it exists. For binary mode operations, when working with non-text files, you can add B to any of these modes such as RB or WB+. Now let's dive into writing to files in C. Here's an example that demonstrates writing to a text file. We include the standard input-output header file, standard.io.h. In the main function, we declare a file pointer. We use the fopen function to open a file named data.txt in write mode. It is important to check if the file pointer is null, indicating an error opening the file. If the file opens successfully, we use the fprintf function to write formatted output to the file, such as hello file.io. We can also use the fputs function to write a string to the file, such as line written with fputs. Finally, we close the file using the fclose function. The fopen function returns a file pointer, which acts as the handle to the file. The W mode creates a new file or truncates an existing one. Always check if fopen returns null, which indicates a failure to open the file. The fprintf function works like printf, but writes to a file, while fputs writes a string without formatting. Always call fclose to properly close the file and flush any buffered data. Now let's see how to read from files in C. This example demonstrates reading from a text file. Again, we include the standard input-output library standard.io.h. Inside the main function, we declare a file pointer and a character buffer to store the data read from the file. We use the fopen function to open the file named data.txt in read mode. It's crucial to check if the file pointer is null, indicating an error opening the file. If the file opens successfully, we use a while loop with the fgets function to read the file line by line. The fgets function reads up to 99 characters or until a new line is encountered into the buffer, and then adds a null terminator. We then print the contents of the buffer using the printf function. Finally, we close the file using the fclose function. The R mode opens a file for reading. The file must exist, or fopen returns null. The fgets function reads up to n-1 characters or until a new line into the buffer, and adds a null terminator. The while loop continues until fgets returns null, which happens at end of file or on an error. There are other reading functions, including fscanf for formatted input, and fgec for reading single characters. Let's move on to advanced file operations and best practices in C. Here's an example that demonstrates binary file operations and positioning. We include the standard input-output library, standard.io.h. Within the main function, we declare a file pointer and an integer array with 5 elements. We then open a binary file named data bin in write binary mode using the fopen function. We use the write function to write the contents of the integer array to the file. After writing the data, we close the file using the fclose function. Next, we reopen the same binary file in read binary mode. We use the fseek function to move the file pointer to a specific position within the file, in this case 2 integers from the beginning. We then use the fret function to read an integer value from the current position in the file. Finally, we print the value that we read, and close the file using the fclose function. Use the fseek function to move to specific positions in a file. Seekset, seekcur, and seekend control the reference point. Use the b mode suffix for binary files to ensure consistent behavior across platforms. Always check return values of file operations for errors. Use the for and fef functions to distinguish between errors and end of file. And finally, use the flush function to force buffered data to be written to disk before closing if needed. If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit CodeLucky.com for more such useful content.